Well, here's report number 2. Still on location since the plotter is still plotting and therefore not going to be in the studio. But what we can do today is get to start the serious work on the Enterprise is to do the first thing that you should always do with a kit. Even a garage kit, even a mass-produced kit, even a kit you'd made yourself. Do the first thing, wash those parts. Those parts are plastic and they came out of a mold, and the mold may have had a mold release on it. You have grease to worry about. You've got all manner of things, and it's just a good practice to get into. Familiarize yourself with the parts. If you're worried about losing your way on the part and the part number, take a picture of the sprue. And compare that against your actual instructions and the actual part. If you're worried about where they were on the sprue, take a picture of it with a digital camera and look it up on the computer. Most good instruction sheets these days have layouts of the sprues on them, so that's also something to go by. But it's not very technical. I'm very ceremoniously going to dump these Enterprise parts into warm soapy water. So here it goes. And there you go. They're all in the soapy water. It's a nice little Tupperware bowl I keep for this very purpose. I will swish them around, leave them soak for a while. What are you doing? Oh, I'm just doing the dishes. Doing the dishes and the saucers. Yeah. And the pylons and the nacelles. But, let them get good and soapy, and then I'm going to take them out and clean them with a toothbrush or a fingernail file or a fingernail brush, and then I'm going to put them out on a towel to dry, wipe them off a little bit, rinse them off, and then leave them out on a towel to dry. Okay, I brought this back inside because I just noticed how bright and overwashed the sunlight was washing out the video. So now we're in the kitchen, and the Tupperware container's in the sink. Please try to avoid looking at the rest of the mess. Before you're out there asking, what soap did I use? Let me tell you. I used a little bit of Gain Ultra Degreaser. Look for something that is a degreaser. Dawn is very good. Gain is very good. Some of the bargain brands you may want to shy away from. But anything that it touts itself as being a degreaser, that's what you want to be looking for. Okay, some time has passed, and it's time to pull the parts out of the wash. And this is when the time you really can take and take some minutes to look at it and notice how the part's working, what kind of work it might need done on it, where the spots of trouble are. Now, I noticed that for example, the windows on the saucer, on this kit in general, they could stand to be filed out a little bit more. I don't know whether it was a molding problem or just how the plastic was formed, but I've noticed that the windows on this set, especially these ones in particular, are much bigger and better defined than these ones right over here. So I need to take a square file and just poke those out. Just, I won't say round them out a little bit more because they're square, but just enlarge them a little because they're going to be problems down the road. So the other ones seem to be fairly well formed. The smaller one, or the lower ones, should be a little bit larger than the ones on the top. So if they're coming out looking about the same size, then chances are these need to be reamed out a little bit more, just a touch. They should be a little larger than the ones on the top row. And setting it over here to dry. Pieces that have more detail to them, I will take the toothbrush to and give a good chop and rinse them off. Now on this kit, I do plan on adding not only the navigation lights, but also the spotlights, for lack of a better term. They won't do the job of illuminating that they need to do, because I don't think in the real world you're going to be able to do that. What I will do is just poke some little fiber optics out the holes so you can at least get the indication of the start of the light. You might not get the effect of it, but you'll see where it starts. And I was noticing that, and I noticed on some of the fan drawings of this, that they have a tendency to want to put the red and greens in here, and I don't think those are truly there. I think the one I put the most stock in have the red and green up in this set up here. Something to take a look at. The double blink navigation lights go here, and there's a set of double blinks back here, up here, up here, and up here. And I think the red and green ones are in place up there. Now the double blinks I'm going to be using the antenna control circuit with, but the smaller illumination lights, I think I'm going to try to do those fiber optics, so that red and green may end up being fiber optic. More exciting cleaning. Really get in those windows and get those cleaned out. I noticed on my first kit, and this was something that has also cropped up online, the first kit had a problem here with the photon torpedo joint. You really had to cram them together to get them to meet up right. And to tell you the truth, my first kit had that same problem. I was glad to find out really that it wasn't just me. This kit doesn't seem to have that problem. It seems to go together very well. Now, right now it's not cooperating because it's on camera, but I did notice it in earlier playing around with it, see, look, it's right, sure it's on camera. There's no problem with that meeting up. That looks real good. Also going to try to put the blinking strobe here and the blinking strobe on the bottom. There's also a strobe up here on the belly. Going to try to do those. Those may end up being fiber optics as well. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to chop these underneath the saucer, those little triangle areas. I'm going to try to chop those out, and if not light them, at least put some detail behind them to make them a little bit more attractive. The nacelles, yeah, that's where the weed came from. Now here's the weird thing about these nacelles. Now I can't for the life of me figure out what purpose it serves to have these parts separate, unless there was some plan at some point about making an optional set of these where the fins were extended, so you could swap out whatever set you were going to use, whether you were going to make them extended or retracted. I don't know, it could have been a molding issue, but this is a pretty complicated mold by itself. I can't imagine this little bit here would have caused them that much more problem as far as undercuts. So, but these are parts I'm actually going to glue in and glue together before I even prime it, so that I'm not fighting the thickness of the primer when I go to make these parts, because I really want that seam and this seam here to disappear, and it's best to tackle that right up front before you even prime it. Second nacelle, same as the first. Nothing special there. I won't go through that again, and those parts. The saddle. I was surprised when I was building the first one how effective this piece is, because the cells themselves look kind of flimsy and you can't really figure out how it's going to hold up the weight of the nacelle. But when you put those two pieces together and then you put this saddle in correctly and glue it up the way it's supposed to go, it adds an amazing amount of strength to that. Now on this one, since I'm going to be doing more aggressive lighting on the nacelles, I'm going to have to open up that channel just a little bit more to get the ribbon cable down and to get the wiring for the 9-volt straight just lighting that's not not connected to the Bussard. So that might start to go back to the weakening side, but I found that when I was ready to seal this up, if I just filled this area here with a little bit of 5-minute epoxy, clamped it up right, and then let it dry like that, so that the epoxy was like wanted to feed down in there and pool up in this part. It made a very, very strong joint, and it made the nacelles straight and true and without a problem. I don't know if you can hear this, but that's the sound of a degreased piece of plastic. When your fingers can squeak on there, you know you've got the grease off. This might be of interest to you. This is the only piece that two pieces I glued together before I even put them in the soap. It's this little doodad going into this alcove on the belly piece. I can get it down in camera. This little doodad going down in the belly piece. This seam right here annoyed me so much on my first build that I swore I would do whatever I could on the next one to eradicate it. So I wanted to cram it in there and get it joined up. And I did use 10X on this, despite what I said on the other video about 10X. I still like it for pieces that aren't under stress load, and I'll probably use it in some of the sub-assemblies, but I want to work at getting a little bit of spot putty in there to blend that seam before I even get the first coat of primer on it. Here are two other pieces that I might decide to glue in before I prime. I just don't see any benefit to holding off on putting that piece in. It doesn't give me anything additional, any hardship, any additional later to just go ahead and do it now. There's no other pieces that are depending on it. There's nothing that needs to be put over top of it, so it doesn't seem to be anything that I need to worry about. Oh, and the other thing I will probably do before I prime, and this is not shown because it's a clear piece, but these pieces in here, I will probably put those in place before I prime, because so little of it needs to remain clear. There's actually only 3 little slits there that need to remain clear, and I can put vinyl mask over those and put it in place, and that way I get a good solid glue surface all the way around on the inside before I start priming the outside. And it'll actually, with this piece in place, give me a little bit more structural strength, because you won't get a lot of that deflection going on once that piece is in there and solid. And here are the parts laid out to dry. I'll probably leave them here overnight to dry on their own. I'm not going to try to wipe them down or force them to dry. And we'll pick this up again tomorrow.